So you're thinking about buying a Tesla, but there's a problem. You don't have home charging, and now you're wondering, can it be done? Like, can you actually make it work? Will you actually not save any money relying on public charging versus gas? Does not being able to plug in overnight really harm your battery? Some major tips for owning a Tesla without home charging that you're 100% gonna wanna know, and more. First up, can you make it work? Like, can you get a Tesla without a home charger? Of course you can. In fact, Tesla is the only EV I would recommend for people in the States with zero home charging thanks to the Supercharger network. For the most part, they're everywhere, assuming you don't live in like Alaska, Hawaii, or for some reason, Eastern Kentucky, and they are extremely reliable. However, with that being said, you should go into it with the expectation or the understanding that it's not gonna be optimal. When I am asked about my electric car, one of the first things has to do with public charging stations because, well, they're in public, everyone has seen them, and because you have to go somewhere to fuel up a gas car, people think the same is true for electric. But they're always kind of sort of mind blown to hear when I say that I literally never go to public chargers. And 99.9% of my charging is done at home when I'm sleeping. I'm not going to sugarcoat it like some people online will. I personally would not own a Tesla if I couldn't charge at home or at work or somewhere that I'm at a lot, anywhere that's just not a DC fast charger. As home charging, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most people that have home charging, is the best part about owning a Tesla or an EV. However, I do understand that home charging is not the only appeal to owning a Tesla. Speed, tech, safety, it driving itself, sort of, and more. So if any of those interest you and you don't mind planning ahead, then of course you can make it work. I want to answer the two questions that I see the most. First, is public charging really as expensive as gas? There is this misconception among the general public that charging is free. It's not, well, most of the time. I believe the idea of charging being free stems from the earlier days of Tesla where free supercharging was an incentive for buying the car. Like they would give you X amount of free miles or just straight up unlimited free supercharging. Also, not to mention that a lot of destination chargers are free or were free. They are kind of starting to become paid nowadays, and people equate that being free to DC fast chargers being free. So yeah, most charging, especially DC fast charging, is paid. And for the pricing, it is priced to be competitive with the local gas prices when calculating efficiency. Keyword is efficiency because you want to be using cost per mile instead of, like, I see a lot of people that compare how much it costs to fill up their car versus charging up their Tesla. And while that may be an okay comparison, if you're coming from a super inefficient, like massive SUV that takes like $70 or $80 to fill up, it's not always applicable to everyone. Tesla designed the Supercharger network to enable long distance travel, not for daily around town charging. So just be aware that all of the like gas savings that you hear about is from people charging at home where it is super cheap, and the 1 to 2, maybe 3 or 4 times a year that you road trip, then you would pay almost what gas prices are to use the Supercharger network. For example, gas around me is like $3 to $3.50 a gallon, and supercharging is around 35 cents per kilowatt hour. So a comparable gas car getting 30 miles per gallon with a 12-gallon tank at $3.5 per gallon is roughly $42 to fully fill up, or about 12 cents per mile. For my Tesla, which has roughly a 78 kilowatt hour battery pack that's usable at 35 cents per kilowatt hour and rated for 305 miles, yes, they won't get their EPA range, but gas cars aren't always getting their best MPG, around 9 cents per mile. So while charging in my area isn't more expensive than gas, it's not far off. And like I said, in areas like California where gas is double than what my area is, so is the kilowatt hour cost. And for anyone that may be able to get home charging and they're kind of on the fence whether they need it or not, my price per mile is roughly 1.5 cents charging at home, or about 6 times cheaper. It won't always be 6 times cheaper for everyone, but it is normally at least half the cost. Now, you know what doesn't depend on you having home charging or not? Accessories. I mean, you just dropped $50,000 on a car that doesn't even come with floor mats. I actually just took delivery of my new Model 3 Performance, and I kid you not, the first thing I did when I got home was put in all my accessories. All other floor mats, organizers, and screen protectors are all day one must-haves in my opinion. I'll have the ones that I just put in my new car along with all my accessories linked below. And to celebrate the new Model 3 Performance, Test Stuff is running a limited time sale until Monday, June 10th, where code M3P will get you 15% off your entire order. And that's not just new Model 3 stuff, but Model Y as well, including our RGB dash light strip, which makes your Model Y or old Model 3 look and feel pretty much like a new Model 3. Not to mention it takes like literally zero brain power to install. And now the second question. Tesla tells me to charge to X% and to always be plugged in when the car is not being driven. Will I hurt the battery if I'm not able to do this? So if you have a non-LFP car or anything that isn't a base Model 3, then you don't really need to charge the car to a certain percent once a day or week. In fact, the closer you can keep it to 50, the better for long-term degradation. However, if you have an LFP car, then yes, you should be charging it to 100% at least once a week. It's just the way that the pack chemistry is, and it's good for balance. As for staying plugged in when not in use, yes, this is something that Tesla themselves recommends. It reduces drain via pulling from the line for normal systems checks, which leads to less cycles while also helping balance cells and the BMS, or what controls how much battery you have versus how much is shown. However, the data we have right now, which honestly isn't a lot, as it wasn't until like late 2020, 2021 that a lot of non-EV enthusiasts that didn't have home charging started getting Teslas, show that not much will happen by not keeping your car plugged in overnight, except for just extra cycles on the pack. But with those two questions out of the way, let's get into Tesla ownership without a home charger, the tips, tricks, and just what you need to be prepared for. First up, and this is going to sound stupid, like I know it's going to sound stupid, but just hear me out, all right? Try to get home charging. Literally anything is better than nothing, and home charging isn't, only a big charging box that's doing 48 amps, all right? A lot of people new to Teslas don't know this, but you can charge off of a normal wall outlet. Yeah, like the ones you plug your phone into. Yes, it's super slow, like 2 to 3 miles per hour or about 1 kilowatt, but most people are home for at least 10 to 12 hours a day, and that's upwards of 36 miles gained. Most apartments will have some form of an exterior plug on the outside that you could park close enough to and be able to reach with a mobile connector. You can pick up a mobile connector from Tesla that includes a NEMA 515, otherwise known as a normal wall plug, and a 1450 should you ever get better charging for around $200. And while I personally wouldn't recommend it, if length is a problem, you could get a heavy duty extension cord which would extend your range and allow you to connect your 515. Just be aware that doing this defeats the temperature sensor safety feature at the plug end. If your wall socket gets hot enough, the UMC won't sense this because the plug is at the end of the socket where the extension cord is. Also, the extension needs to be at least a 12 gauge STJW, but you can go even thicker at like a 10 gauge STJW if you can find one. There are also Tesla female to male extension cords you can look at getting, but as I have zero experience with them, I do your own research. But before you go shoving things where you shouldn't be shoving things, I would make sure that you ask if you can plug in. Now, if that is not an option, I have seen places allow for a destination charger to be installed at your parking spot at the cost of you. This would more than likely be extremely expensive, but it is an option. Another thing you can look out for is if your apartment or living space offers garage space. I actually lived in an apartment back in my late teens where you could rent a garage space for, that was like $100 a month. It was a single car garage and it had normal outlets in it. So that always could be an option. However, if all that fails and you really can't charge up where you sleep, then let's move on to destination charging. This could be wherever you frequent. For most people, this is their work. And the great part is there are apps that can help you find these chargers. The one app that I highly recommend that will help you locate all chargers, including destination chargers, PlugShare. You can sort by your plug type and it'll show you everything you need to know. Reviews, pictures, sometimes prices, just pretty much everything you need to actually get there to charge. PlugShare, however, is not a charging app, so once you've found your charger, you'll need to download whatever app it uses. It's normally ChargePoint here in the States, but it could be another company like EVgo or EV Connect or just whatever. Like I mentioned earlier, some destination chargers are free, like the one I frequent, but this will vary along with what speed the destination charger is. As for the connector, as the Tesla connector isn't everywhere, you're going to want to make sure that you have your J1772 adapter, as this is what most destination chargers are. I believe they still come with your Tesla at the time of delivery, so just make sure you just keep it in the car with you along with a Karen lock. The Tesla plug and CCS adapter both have locking mechanisms built in to prevent people from just, unplugging you, but the J1772 does not, so you'll need a lock. I'll have the one that I recommend down below, as I don't recommend those 3D printed ones that you see everywhere due to how easily they can be overpowered. Now, if you're someone that works from home or you just don't frequent anywhere that has a level 2 charger, then your last option is supercharging or DC fast charging. I would recommend picking up the CCS adapter that I just mentioned, as it will allow you to charge at Electrify America fast chargers. They're not as reliable or seamless as Tesla's superchargers, but having the adapter does open you up to the entirety of Electrify America, and these charging stations may be cheaper than a supercharger or even closer to you. If I didn't have home charging, the closest Electrify America is like literally 3 miles away, whereas the closest supercharger is 20 miles away. Now, we kind of already discussed supercharging, and you don't need anything special. You literally just pull up and plug in. However, if you're looking at saving money, check the supercharger via your Tesla screen to see if they have off-peak pricing and go during those times. Normally, it's like in the middle of the night, which I wouldn't recommend going at 3 a.m., but it also extends into like the morning or the afternoon. A few tips for supercharging: I would not recommend charging past 80 to 90%, as it'll take super long. Like going from 80 to 100% takes roughly the same amount of time as going from 0 to 60%. Also, if you're at a 150 kilowatt supercharger, otherwise known as a V2, leave a space if you can between cars, as they share power in pairs. This way you just get the fastest charging speed and you don't upset the other superchargers. And finally, because you're not waking up every day with a full charge, how do you make your battery last the longest and just increase efficiency? I have a ton of videos relating to efficiency that you can check out, but some key things to do are: first, tire pressure, and this one is super easy. Make sure you're at your recommended PSI. Most Model 3 and Ys are 42 PSI cold, but double check on your door sticker or screen. As for what cold means, because I know some people are kind of confused by this, in the morning before you've driven the car for the day. Do not try to underinflate, so when the tires, heat up and start expanding, no. Cold means cold. Just do it before you've driven for the day. I'll have the portable tire inflator that I use linked below. It's super compact. I just leave it in the car in case of emergencies. It can pump up all 4 tires on a single charge and has a flashlight and battery bank built in case of emergencies. I've raved about this thing on the channel. It's great. Next up, reduce weight in the car. And no, I'm not telling you to go on a diet, but if you're the type of person that just leaves random stuff in your car, like in your trunk, take it out. Just take it out. Number 3, get tint. If you live somewhere where it gets super hot, having tint will reduce how much the AC has to work to keep the cabin cool. 4, turn on chill mode. This will not only smooth out the torque curve and save on battery, but also cause less wear and tear to your tires. The trade-off being that, well, your car is kind of slow now. However, you can always map changing the acceleration mode to the left scroll wheel in case you need it in a pinch, like overtaking someone on the highway, or if a base charger pulls up next to you at a stoplight, and it's always the base ones. Stop checking your Tesla app. Every time you open the app, the car has to wake up and it starts sending stats to you. So just, let the car sleep. Turn off cabin overheat protection. You could set it to non-AC, which will crack the windows, but assuming you don't have home charging, this also means you don't have secure parking. So having your windows like randomly roll down if you like park in a parking lot probably isn't something you want. If you have FSD, turn off summon standby. It's kind of useless anyway. Tesla updated the Energy app a while back, and it's actually pretty useful now. I recommend you familiarize yourself with this app along with taking the recommendations that it gives you on how to save battery based on your driving. If you have a decent commute on the interstate, far right lane not doing over 70 will net great efficiency, and you could also find a nice semi-truck to draft behind, which will make it even better, though at the cost of your front end getting peppered with rocks, assuming you don't have PPF. Now, during the winter, it can get a little tricky. I would still recommend preconditioning your cabin and battery despite the battery hit it will have, as your more efficient driving should make up for it. Unless your commute is super short, that is, well, then you're kind of just out of luck. Short, like little burst drives during the winter, just even if you do precondition, you're still going to have crap efficiency. And if you're wondering why then that Tesla recommends you precondition if it is a hit to your battery, well, normally you would be plugged in at your home charger, which would replenish it or just, prevent it from even dropping. So you'd still leave with whatever you charged up to, but now with a warm battery and a warm cabin. Make sure you are fully mastering and utilizing regen, as anytime you use the brakes, that energy, instead of it going back into the battery, is being lost to heat through the pads. And finally, Sentry mode, which does drain about 1% per hour, but it does add a level of security. It's up to you whether you think it's worth the 8 to 10% loss overnight that it could have. Like I mentioned at the beginning and in previous videos, I still very much am in the camp of, if I didn't have a home charger, I wouldn't have a Tesla or an EV. But that doesn't mean you can't. Maybe charging is much cheaper than gas where you are. Maybe you just really hate gas stations. Maybe you like the price to low end performance. Whatever it might be, you can 100% make it work, as a lot of people already do. And don't let anyone tell you that you can't, because trust me, you can. If you are a Tesla owner that lives without a home charger and you have anything to add that I didn't cover in this video, please let us know your knowledge down in the comments section. If you are new around here and you want to see more Tesla related stuff in your YouTube feed, then feel free to subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.